The previous basket is under review.
Welcome in to another episode of Weekend Under Review. That is Matthew Winick. I am Brian Rauf, here to take you through Feast Week, a very exciting week. We're recording this on Thanksgiving night. I am traveling. You can see not the traditional setup here if you're watching us on YouTube, but one of the best weeks of hoops of the season, perhaps the best of the regular season until we get to postseason play. So a lot to break down. We'll get to it in a second. First, we have to let you know that if you are not subscribed to Basket Under Review, subscribe to Basket Under Review. $10 a month gets you access to all of our premium content, basketunderreview.com. It also gets you access to the Discord, which has Shirley Donovan's insights and intel, which that's worth the price alone. But then you get the website content as well, plus the community of just college basketball sickos that are in that Discord. It's a phenomenal thing. So if you have not, go subscribe to Basket Under Review right now. All right, Matthew, let's start with Players Era, because Players Era had the most teams. We're not going to get into the discourse of if they should play in smaller arenas, the format, which seems like the format may change. Online bullying works from time to time. But we do need to talk about Michigan, because that was incredible what Michigan did in those 3 games performances they put them in the same realm, I think, in the early season of Purdue and Arizona, even above it. They're the 6th team to be number 1 in KenPom already at this point in the season. Just how can we sum up what we saw from the Wolverines this week?
Michigan, like the team that almost lost to TCU and got taken to OT by Wake
Hey,
Forest.
TCU beat Florida. Maybe that's not a bad thing. TCU beat Florida.
Michigan, on paper, as a roster, is the best team in the sport. And quite honestly, I don't know if it's that close. From 1 to like 7 to 8, just they overwhelm you with talent, with size, with athleticism. They're insanely good. So when you let them play one-on-one basketball, they're going to win the basketball game. And their 2 opponents, Auburn and Gonzaga, more drop coverage teams. They're not going to really double that much, not doubling the post. They're not, playing extra weak side help. They're going to let you beat them playing your game. And Michigan, when Michigan plays their game, there's not a team in the country that is any better. What happened in the Wake game and what happened in the TCU game and why they almost lost both of those is because those are 2 teams that do trap the post, that do send weak side help, that make you play as a team, that make you play as a unit, that make you swing the ball. And Michigan really struggled. They didn't even score a point per possession in either of those games, and then they looked like the Globetrotters in Players Era. So note to teams that are going to play Michigan moving forward is make this team be a team. They're going to turn the ball over. They're not great off-ball shooters. If they're one-on-one guys, if Elliot Cadeau is running pick and roll, if Yaxel Lindenberg's playing short post, if Daimara can make plays down low, they're beating you. That's just the reality.
Well, that was one of the things in Players Era is they didn't really turn it over. Certainly not the same clip as they did. And that had been the question, because they had those difficult wins that maybe should not have been as difficult as they were. But you saw some of the issues, and it's okay, well, what happens if they clean some of those up? Like the self-inflicted turnovers. What if they clean those up? There's the chemistry of having all of these new guys playing together. What happens when they figure that out? This is what it looked like. Their ability to turn defense into offense is up there with anybody in the country. Obviously, with the size they have, they're going to be a really solid defensive team. The top-ranked defense on KenPom right now. The top 5 in both offense and defense on Torvik. Like, you have all of these things. The offense looked much, much better in Players Era, obviously, but it was because it flowed better. It seemed like before Players Era, they were still thinking about where guys had to be, figuring out how to play together, kind of work through. There was the whole, Yaxel at the 3 and how the big lineup was going to work and some of the just little tweaks that they needed to make. They looked like a well-oiled machine in Vegas, bar none. Like that was, I think, the most impressive basketball we have seen to this point this season. Acknowledging Arizona has played really well, acknowledging that Purdue has played pretty well. Like Purdue did this to Texas Tech, and Michigan just did it 3 times.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned the defense because there will be games where Michigan struggles to score because of what I mentioned before and what Wake and TCU were able to do and make them play a lot of ball movement. They're number one in the country, not only in defense, not only in 2-point field goal percentage, but rim field goal percentage. Teams are shooting 39% at the rim against them. It makes sense. Daimar and Morez Johnson are probably on the short list of top 10 rim defenders in the country. So, like, that makes a lot of sense. But good to know that if they're having a bad game, they're turning it over, the shot's not falling. They have the transition offense and they have the rim defense. And those are two things that don't really go away. Like those are just two things that you're good at or you're not. And they're very good at both. And it means that no matter what happens, there's going to be a floor there that few teams can match.
100%. And if the offense is clicking, they can beat anybody in the country, as we saw. I want to talk about the Gonzaga side of things next because Gonzaga looked like what Michigan looked like the first part of the players there, the first part of the season, really. Like we had talked about Gonzaga being much better than we thought they were. And I was ready to come on here and talk about Gonzaga being potentially as good as the national championship teams, the teams that made the title game for Gonzaga in 2021, 2017. Obviously, we don't have to do that because they got the doors blown off them by a Michigan team that's playing at such a high level. But does that change the way we look at Gonzaga, or is it just a matter of they run up against a buzzsaw in Michigan?
I think it's the second one there. You look at the 3-point splits, and when they're shooting almost the same amount of threes, Michigan makes 13 and Gonzaga makes 3. Like you're never going to win a basketball game when you get outshot by 30 points from beyond the arc. The problem here was Michigan is the only team that's better at Gonzaga at what Gonzaga does. Mm-hmm. Like Gonzaga, 2 bigs. Michigan does it better. They have a better assortment of front court options. On ball point guard running pick and roll is not a great shooter. Elliot Cadeau is better, at least especially in this game, than Braden or Mario Saint-Superi. And then the wing shooting, like when Roddy Gale, Trey McKinney, and Amari Burnett as off-ball guys, all 3 of them were better than any of the off-ball guys Gonzaga has, which is probably their biggest flaw. So when Michigan comes in and just does what you do better than them, Gonzaga can do to most teams what Michigan did to them just because of like the 2 big run up and down style can just murder teams. It's just Gonzaga got a taste of their own medicine really in this game.
I'm glad you brought up Trey McKinney because I think like long-term sustainability for Michigan in terms of offense is going to rely on, I think, Trey McKinney and LJ Kaysen because those are the guys who have some of the scoring upside on the wings that if Michigan starts getting that production consistently, it may be over. It may be over, quite frankly. The other positive I want to talk about, I want to make sure we touch on, we'll get to some of the negatives for some teams here in a second. I feel better about Auburn than I did last week, than I certainly did 2 weeks ago. We had concerns because we talked about this in the preseason. You have 4 guys who played D1 last year. Mm-hmm. 1 guy returning, right? And Todd Pettiford, who was, if you want 1 guy back, Todd Pettiford's probably the guy you want to have back. Mm-hmm. Stephen Pearl, first-time head coach, he comes out, and they looked like they belonged in this with the other top teams. They went 2-1. I don't know if they're going to win the SEC or be in the forefront of that title race. But like I left feeling like, okay, yeah, this is a top 25 caliber team where I had real questions about that coming in.
The part that concerns me about Auburn, they've played 4 power conference games. Now they're 2-2. Obviously, they lost to Houston and Michigan, so maybe it's not, right. Sound the alarms. They're 2-0 when Todd Pettiford scores 24 plus, and they're 0-2 when he doesn't, when he scored 15 and 16. This is because Todd Pettiford is such an on-ball option for this team. He's 76th in the country in shot percentage. If he's having an off game, it's really tough for them to win, especially against upper echelon teams. But his shot making is so elite that he can beat nearly anyone in the country when he's on. So you don't want to be so dependent on one guy, and Auburn might be that. Obviously, they have Keyshawn Hall, who's probably still a little banged up and not at full strength, but really they'll go as far as Pettiford takes them.
Yeah, he shredded St. John's in that game. Just absolutely shredded St. John's. And that's one of another point I wanted to get to is St. John's and the Red Storm, because they're 4-3 now after Players era, which I have to caveat. Houston was 4-3 after Players Era last season. So like the season is not lost. The sky is not falling, everything like that. But to Rick Pitino, the sky might be falling because the defense has not been anywhere near as good as it needs to be. Certainly not as good as it was last year. The front court, you're getting kind of what you expected. Bryce Hopkins has been okay. Hasn't been great. You're relying on Zuby Ejiofor to do a lot of creation for that offense, which is problematic. Zuby can do that, but that's problematic. Like the backcourt continues to be a major concern on both ends of the court. And we had the shooting concerns and all that, but the defense hasn't been where it needs to be. And I do wonder, like, all right, we knew St. John's had these problems. Did we underestimate how serious the problems were on the perimeter for St. John's?
I didn't underestimate it. This is a lot of what I was expecting, to be honest. Like Dylan Darling is a good playmaker, but he's a game manager at this point. He's not looking to score, and teams know that, and they can hunt him defensively because he's small. And Ian Jackson is only looking to score, so it's just you're really kind of pigeonholing your guard room when that's the case. The big problem for me is they were clobbered on the offensive boards in this game. In this tournament. Teams grabbed, on average, nearly 50% of their misses against St. John's in this tournament. Iowa State 45, Baylor 51, Auburn 48. So basically 49% of their misses they got back. Yeah. Against the St. John's team known for physicality, that's completely unacceptable. And you're not going to win big games against really good teams if they grab half of their misses. It's a math equation they're going to lose every time.
I was a little disappointed in San Diego State as well in this tournament, not because they went 1-2, because anybody can go 1-2 in this with the level of teams that were there. I don't think this is a great offensive team, and they kind of showed they weren't a great offensive team, but they're not a great defensive team right now either, and that's what San Diego State needs to be and has made their bread and butter. Like they were, I would say, bottom half of Players Era in terms of the way their defense looked in this. And I still trust San Diego State to be fine in the Mountain West because they have more talent than a vast majority of teams in the Mountain West. We've seen how bad the Mountain West has been, or some of the losses that the Mountain West has suffered in the month of November here. But for the preseason talk of San Diego State, they were a popular pick to be like a dark horse top 25 team, a dark horse second weekend team in the NCAA tournament. I had real questions about that because of the offense, but if the defense is going to do this too, like this could be a problem for the Aztecs.
We're talking about KenPom preseason ranking. They were number 9 in defense. Now they're 61st. Yeah. They've only played 6 games. They've fallen off the face of the earth defensively. And Brian Dutcher, since he's gotten to San Diego State, has only been worse than 30th once. So this is the second worst defense he's ever had so far. What's the craziest part out of all of it is they've only allowed less than 1 point per possession twice, the first 2 games of the season, which were the only 2 that Magoon Guath missed. So he came back, arguably the best defender in the Mountain West, and then immediately their defense was bad. It doesn't make any sense. They're not rebounding right now. They're shooting really well from 3, which is a huge concern because eventually that's going to kind of dry up. And if the defense doesn't have a major shift, then they look like nowhere near the most impressive team in the Mountain West right now.
I just love that phrasing of they're shooting really well from 3, and that's a huge concern.
Well, it's not going to last. They're not a 40% three-point shooting team.
That's the thing. Like in reality, this is probably worse than it looks because the shooting has been booing it a little bit. Yeah. I think that's a good point. But yeah, it's an issue for San Diego State. Again, it's November. I trust that coaching staff and Brian Dutcher to figure things out, but they haven't looked like this. And for a team that had expectations, it's a problem. Any other thing?
Yeah, go ahead. About Iowa State?
I would love to talk about Iowa State.
Good. You can go first if you want to.
Milan Momcilovic looks like he's made the jump. Joshua Jefferson is bleeping awesome. Can do just about everything, right? I know Taman Lipsey got hurt in this tournament. He has played really well to start the season when he's been healthy. Obviously, he's one of, if not the best perimeter defender in the country. The playmaking that he has shown this season and showed when he was healthy again in this tournament is at a high level. But those guys went out, other guys stepped into their roles and played at a high level too. Like we wwere concerned about Iowa State being like a 3-man team with Lipsey, Jefferson, Momcilovic, and what they were going to get around them and how far those three could take them. This is not a 3-man team anymore. And I think, like for Iowa State, the top of the Big 12 is going to be a gauntlet. And the Big 12 did awesome this week, by the way. Only 2 losses for that conference, and I think in Players era. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they'll be at the top of the conference, but they're going to be in the mix in that conference title race. I love what I saw from the Cyclones.
I think that Iowa State could beat a handful of mid-major teams with just Lipsey, Jefferson, and Momcilovic.
They might.
That trio is insanely good.
They could do the Colin Sexton Bama thing and just go 3-on-5, and
they could do the Colin Sexton Bama versus Minnesota. They could do that and beat some teams. Like actually, Josh Jefferson's the best of the 3. Like genuinely, he's unbelievable. He can do every single thing on the basketball court, and he just looks. Whenever he's on the court, he is in control of the game.
Yeah.
Offensively, defensively, he's always in the right place at the right time. And honestly, you feel the same way about Lipsey. Like those are 2 guys that you never have to worry about where their heads at, where they are on the floor. They're always doing the right thing. So when Momcilovic is like going nuclear from deep, then yeah, they're going to win a lot of basketball games. But I'm really impressed by the other guys. Like I did not see this from Blake Buchanan because clearly he was not good at Virginia.
No,
he's been tremendous this season, and the only flaw really is that he's going to get in foul trouble. They have no one behind him. But when he's on the court, like that's a wrecking crew. And then Kylian Touré, the freshman from France, is athletically superior to nearly any other freshman in the country. He's 87th in the country in steal rate. He's hitting a couple of threes. He's getting to the rim. He's just like a perfect complement to the shooting of Momcilovic, the passing of Lipsey, and the all-around game of Jefferson. That 5-man unit is a top 5 starting lineup in the country.
I agree 100%. I agree 100%. And getting that level from those 2 guys in particular is what makes the difference between Iowa State being a team that can make a Final Four run versus one that's like, yeah, maybe they'll win a game or 2 in the tournament, right?
Mm-hmm. You got it.
Let's go to Maui because we got to. We're at minute 17 of this. We need to touch on a couple other tournaments. Maui's the other one we're going to talk about from a big perspective, and this is probably from a more negative standpoint because both of us picked NC State to win Maui. And I don't think either of us gave it a real second thought that NC State was going to win Maui. They leave 1-2. You had players talking after the loss to Texas about how they let everybody down and they were just like really upset with themselves, which I think they should have been because they got, quite frankly, punked by Seton Hall. Seton Hall played harder, played tougher, did all the things that NC State wants to be. Seton Hall did that better. And then Texas just was better. They made the smart plays. NC State thrives on chaos and wants to play a chaotic game under Will Wade. But that chaos left so many open looks from 3, left so many open layups, just so many open opportunities for Texas and Boise State and Seton Hall that it's got to get cleaned up if they're going to be anything close to what we thought they were going to be in the ACC.
I don't think Havoc defense teams should play in Maui. Like, I'm kind of joking, but I'm also kind of serious because you're right. The way that they play defense, and the way that they overhelp, and the way that they double and trap, and all of that fun stuff, full court press, just leaves so many open threes. And in a normal game, you take that because, you take your chances. You're going to get steals. You'll miss a lot of threes. But in Maui, like, genuinely, threes go in at such a high clip that it's just completely overexposing your defense. And part of that is what happened with NC State. I don't want to give them a cop-out. Like, that's a little bit of it. The other problem is in their 2 losses, Seton Hall and Texas, they allowed 65% from 2 in both games. This team is small. Yeah. Like, Van Allen Lubin offensively, good offensive rebounder, good around in the paint, but they're like they do not have height. And on weak side offensive rebounds, they're in huge trouble. And when teams can get the ball inside through all their pressure and trapping, it's 2 points. So it just puts so much pressure on the top end of their defense to like contain and get steals, because if you beat their first line, they really don't have any rim protection, at least amongst the guys they play real minutes for.
And not certainly not that they've shown, right? And Darren Williams had a rough tournament. He had a rough couple of days. He did not play to his typical standard. And NC State at this point hasn't had the consistent production behind him to make up for that. Like you mentioned, Van Allen Lubin had some good offensive games, not great defensively. I think long term, like they need Matt Abel to be that number 2 guy. He's got the talent to be. If he can become consistent, then you start getting into do you play him more than Trey Holloman, who's up and down in his own right? Do you play him a little bit more than Paul McNeil, who's up and down in his own right? I think there are some things that could happen there down the line for NC State. We saw some of those warts pop up. USC won Maui, so we got to talk about them. They did not truly get tested against Texas or NC State like we thought they were going to, but got Arizona State in the title game. They beat them without Rodney Rice, which I think is telling. What do you take away from this from a Trojan perspective, looking at Eric Musselman's squad?
Yeah, Boise, Seton Hall, Arizona State is not the greatest Maui path that a champion's ever had. I'll say that. Eric Musselman learned, I'll give him credit. He completely failed in the transfer portal last year, starting from scratch at USC, like mistake after mistake. Like Josh Cohen, Josh Cohen's number one of the mistakes. He made lots of mistakes. And he fixed all of them this year. He was like, we were too small. I mean, he didn't tell this to me, but I can think what he was thinking. We're too small. We're not athletic enough. And every position we're undersized in the Big Ten. And they got huge and they got really athletic and physical. And it completely paid off in this tournament. Ezra Asar is getting to the free throw line at absolutely ridiculous rates.
Yeah.
Chad Baker-Mazara is way more on ball than he ever was at Auburn, and it's paying off. He's playing with a lot of freedom, which is probably good for him and the way that he likes to play. And then Jacob Kofi is just a beast around the rim and an excellent defender. They have role players everywhere. And yeah, like Rodney Rice, probably their best scorer, didn't even play in that final, and they were still more than good enough. And they haven't even had Elijah Arenas yet, the high 4-star freshman who should be back soon.
Elijah Arenas comes back on this team. That's going to be fun. That's going to be dangerous, both for opponents and for referees, because just the chaos of that could be interesting. This may seem weird to say about a 35-year-old player who's still on the court, or however old Chad Baker-Mazara is. He has impressed me so much this year. I think him being on the ball more, he has shown a lot more, because his role at Auburn was more 3 and D essentially, which is probably what it should have been on Auburn given the other guys who were on that team. He has shown he's got more in the bag. And just, the mock shooting of a defender aside that he got a tech for that Arizona State title game, which was just mind-boggling. Why you would do that?
It's Chad Baker-Mazara.
You have to take the Chad Baker-Mazara along with the play. He just having a 6'7" versatile guy who can handle the ball like that and create his own shot and create off the bounce is things that are hard to guard, like just the natural part of that. And so you have that as an option along with Rodney Rice, who does the same things as a 6'4", 6'5" guard. I know there's not a true point guard on this team, but having 2 primary ball handlers, or 2 guys who can be primary ball handlers, who have that size, who can do that, perfectly plays into what Eric Musselman wants to do. Right? That is the Eric Musselman bread and butter. It's almost like a Martin twin deal that he had at Nevada. The Martin twins were a little bit more level-headed than Chad Baker-Mazara. But it's the same kind of thought.
Yeah, from the Martin twin team, everyone was 6'6" or taller, and that's this team as well.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. What else from Maui do you want to touch on?
Arizona State is not going to finish, I think, second last. They were predicted second last in the Big 12. They're not going to finish second last. I know everyone says that when a team plays well and whatever recency bias. There are teams in the Big 12 that are worse than them. They'll be fine. Pig Johnson and Mo Odom are a fun backcourt duo. Mo Diop is huge. They'll win a couple of games here.
I tweeted this out because watching them, like the individual players they have, there's real talent on that team. And like from a roster building standpoint, I think they fit well. But there's just so many times where it's like, oh, here's a guy who's wide open for three that we just forgot to cover. Or, oh, there's a guy getting wide open layup because we just didn't rotate. Or we gave up 2 points because we threw the ball right to your chest. Just the mental errors are baffling and really limited this team. I thought clean some of that up. I think there's potential for them to potentially do something, but cleaning up mental errors with the Bobby Hurley team is not something that I'm going to necessarily rely on.
I don't think it'll be a problem next year.
Okay. We'll see. We will see. Let's get into some of the games that happened today. Again, we're recording Thanksgiving night. Michigan State and North Carolina was the first big game. We have the two big games following the NFL games. I do like how Fox and CBS have done that to try and maintain viewership past the NFL games.
It works.
It absolutely works. I got a football family in South Carolina to watch more college basketball today than they ever have on the main TV. You know, my phone got much less work than it normally does on a holiday like this. Michigan State gets the big win. We have gushed the last couple of weeks about Michigan State after having serious doubts about them in the preseason, and the blueprint worked again. Right, they made North Carolina play a slower half-court game. They executed, got out in transition when they were able to, did well inside. Jeremy Fears did Jeremy Fears things. Like this was just another notch in the belt for Michigan State team that simply takes care of business their way.
My takeaway is North Carolina. Obviously, Michigan State, we've talked about them a bunch. They're not going to deviate much from their – it's really just are the shots going in or not. And they only took 10 of their 60 shots from three. So really, they were going to play their game, and it was going to be whether North Carolina could beat them or not. And North Carolina could not beat them, which is such a shame, not only because of the well-reported budget and how much North Carolina is paying for their players, but because genuinely, like, Caleb Wilson and Henry Visar are an incredible front court tandem. Like, there are very few better in the country. It's just unbelievable. Obviously, Seth Trimple's out, but I don't really care. It's still unbelievable how few guards and how little off-ball shooting they put around a top 5 front court in the country. Like, that's just completely egregious because Henry Visar is maybe the most underrated big in the country because I think he's truly one of the very best the sport has. And obviously, we talk about Caleb Wilson, how amazing is it. They have nothing around him. Like, Kyan Evans and Luka Bogovac were combined 1 of 11 from 3. If they go 4 for 11, maybe North Carolina wins this game and is close down the stretch. But just the complete lack of shot making let Michigan State completely, commit to defending the bigs extremely aggressively because they weren't worried about anyone else.
Bogovac has struggled a lot this year, or has been inconsistent, let's say, to frame it in a positive way. And when you do not have Seth Trimble, you kind of need him to be, from a standpoint of obviously you're down Seth Trimble, but Kyan Evans is not like your prototypical creator. He's not somebody who can say, go get me 20. He can get you 20, but it's going to be a thing where it's like, oh, hey, he got 20 because he got to his spots and did well, and some guys got him open looks. It's not throw the ball to him. It's not to Todd Pettiford, right? Like, go get me 20. Yeah. We're going to get you 20. I do think Trimble matters a lot to this team from that standpoint because he is somebody with his athleticism who gets to the rim, gets into the lane, can collapse defense and create more open looks. But also, Evans is a good shooter. Jonathan Powell shot really well at West Virginia last year. I think there are guys who are good standstill spot-up shooters on this team. They haven't necessarily shown that all the time this season because there hasn't been the true creation on this team. But I still think North Carolina at full strength can be okay. And I do think, it would be interesting to see Trimble's defense on Jeremy Fears and if that would have disrupted Michigan State's offense at all. Nothing we have seen from Michigan State and Jeremy Fears would indicate that would be the case. But again, Trimble is one of the better perimeter defenders in the country. I would see how that would play out. But yeah, like North Carolina does not have as much margin for error as you would expect them to have, again, given the price tag that came with the roster, given the fact that they're North Carolina with a top 5 pick in the front court and one of the best centers in the front court next to him as well.
Yeah, no, that's the right take.
Yeah. The nightcap, which we were recording right after, was Duke's victory over Arkansas. game of runs. Duke led by 13, then was down a good bit, and then ultimately pulled out the victory there in Chicago. Does this game tell you more about Duke or Arkansas in your mind?
Duke, because finally Cameron Boozer had an amazing game against the Power Conference team.
Yes.
It took 4 tries, but he finally did it. He was great from start to finish, which had not happened in the Tennessee exhibition or either of their 2 Power Conference games early in the year against Texas and Kansas. Maybe it was because Arkansas is a relatively thin front line. They're tall, they're athletic, they're relatively thin, and Boozer just bullied his way through them. Or maybe he's starting to learn how to get to his spots and finish around, high major college basketball athleticism. But whatever it was, he willed this team to a win. Caleb Foster was their second best player, and no other perimeter player hit double figures. So for Duke to win that game against a feisty Arkansas squad, maybe Caleb Foster's good, but perhaps the bigger takeaway is Cameron Boozer is good enough to will his team, to will Duke to big wins against Power Conference teams, which he needed a lot of help from his teammates to get them there in the previous couple.
Yeah, this was his best game. And Arkansas's front court, Trevon Brazile, is limited defensively in what they can do, and Duke went after him and went after them. Cameron Boozer is too skilled to not figure out like the finishing over size the way that he needs to. And this is one game. We'll see how that continues. I still think Duke's ceiling is very much dependent upon there being a perimeter creator emerging somehow. Like Caleb Foster scored. He also had a couple of decisions in this game and a couple of stretches in this game that kept Arkansas in it or hurt Duke magnificently. Right. Again, some bad stretches for Mr. Foster. I still think Caden Boozer is the best chance at becoming that for Duke. And he showed some flashes of like possessions where he can be that, but it's too inconsistent and too few and far between to really rely on it right now. Duke is a very good team, could still win the ACC, but just viewing this from the standpoint of Duke's goals every year to make Final Four in the national championship, that's not happening until we see more consistent guard play. But beating this Arkansas team with Caleb Foster being your only perimeter guy in double figures shows how high the floor is for this team. And we'll continue to talk about that all season long. The floor for Duke is incredibly high on a night-in, night-out basis.
Yeah, Pat Gong was good. He's not, maybe people thought they were taking, if you thought he was taking a superstar leap, like, no, and maybe next year, if he stays, he's really good. He's a really good fourth best player. Right now, we know who Duke's best player. Maybe he's a good third best player. We know who Duke's best player is, but I think we're both kind of hitting the same point. Who's that guy that slots in between them? Because Isaiah Evans has not removed the label of just a shooter. He still has that label until further notice, and then there's just a big gap that needs to be filled between those two.
Yeah, I know I got some flack because I came on here after an exhibition game against UCF and was like, the breakout's not happening for Pat Ngongba.
Well, it's relative.
It was relative. The breakout projection, like he was in lottery conversations. He was in first team All ACC conversations.
He's good.
He's a good player. He plays his role really well, and I do not mean that in any sort of derogatory way, other than he is not a superstar.
Yeah,
he's good at what Duke needs.
Probably right.
He's good at what Duke needs him to do, and he is helping set that floor certainly for the Blue Devils. What else from this week? Because we touched on a couple of things, but there was like 8,000 basketball games on since Monday, which has been awesome. Is there anything else that caught your eye, or you want to make sure we touch on before we get to the one big game this weekend?
I am not letting Cincinnati off the hook for losing by 8 at home to Eastern Michigan. I'm not letting you get off the hook. We're talking about San Diego State and the fact that they can't play defense. Cincinnati can play defense. They're 214th in Ken Palm's offensive efficiency right now. They've scored over 1 point per possession twice in their 7 games against Western Carolina and NJIT. They couldn't muster it against Georgia State or Mount St. Mary's or Eastern Michigan. They weren't even close against Louisville or Dayton. They cannot score. like anyone that had any faith in Cincinnati after they were sort of close against Louisville, and then they immediately turn around and lose by 8 at home to Eastern Michigan, you cannot take this team seriously under the current regime. You can't take them seriously.
Yeah.
I won't even consider it anytime soon.
And with how strong the Big 12 looks,
It's bad.
they're going to finish in a double-digit seed in the conference tournament. That's where the Bearcats are going to be. I want to talk about a couple A10 teams, Dayton and St. Louis. Dayton's only loss was to Cincinnati, which may say something. But Dayton now has overtime wins over Marquette and Georgetown, both away from home. It was at Marquette, and then it was Georgetown at the ESPN Events Invitational in Disney. That bodes well for what I think Dayton can be. St. Louis, we've talked about being the A10 favorite, being awesome. Beat Santa Clara in a real, there's at large potential, I think, for both those teams. And so St. Louis to get that win, I think, just further hammers home the fact that that's a really, really good team that can do some damage and be in the top 25 at some point this year, which I think we both said we expect.
I think St. Louis is better than Dayton. I mean,
Yes.
Obviously the A10 play will tell us this.
Yes.
If anything, and I don't want to overly transitive property this, but Dayton losing to Cincinnati and then beating two Big East teams might actually say more about the Big East being bad.
I don't know.
Do you see what I'm saying here?
Because one of them is Georgetown, I'm going to completely deny that Georgetown just did not come to play. No, I think that's a real possibility. We've talked about the Big East generally being down. We have seen Butler play pretty well. We have seen Georgetown play well, obviously before the first really 35 minutes against Dayton. They somehow forced overtime in that game. Dayton should have won that going away. That had not gone to overtime. But Marquette has struggled. Creighton struggled. They did beat Oregon, but Oregon without Nate Biddle and Oregon in general, a little bit shaky. But two teams just to watch, top of the A10, Dayton and St. Louis. I think those are two teams that can make noise on the national stage.
And not Loyola Chicago.
Unfortunately, not Loyola Chicago. Yeah, this is
not Loyola Chicago.
We talk about how when there's a big blowout victory, right? Or a big blowout loss, you just flush the tape because you just don't take anything away from it. This is a flush the tape year for Loyola Chicago. Let's reset. Let's worry about next year because it has not been a November to remember for the Ramblers.
It is not
at all.
No.
There's only one real big game this weekend, unfortunately, to talk about. You had this big week. I guess it is rivalry weekend in college football and NFL games, but Friday night, UConn, Illinois. I guess it's Friday afternoon, isn't it?
Yeah.
UConn, Illinois. A lot of fun in that matchup. What are you expecting to see?
Two healthy teams, I think. I don't want to overly cross my fingers, but it seems like Illinois is finally a full roster, and Terrace Reed and Braylon Mullins are both game to game, day to day. This is a matchup that I would love to see everybody in, and I think we do get that. If UConn has their way, this game is really ugly. And Illinois has shown that if you are playing drop coverage and making them you beat them one-on-one, they're going to do that. Remember the don't forget the Illinois game against Texas Tech where Texas Tech was like, beat us one-on-one. And then Illinois had an insane 5 assists and Andre Stojakovic had 23 points just going ISO two-pointer. That's what UConn wants you to do. And Illinois has shown that they can do that and do that well. So if we're getting Illinois' one-on-one action versus UConn's intricate sets, then that should just be a fascinating clash. Obviously, when you think about these two teams, you think about the infamous NCAA tournament game, the 30-5 run, 30-0
run. That's what,
30-0 run.
Evan Miyakawa's got the kill shot for the 10-0 run. A 30-0 run is now a Husky because of that game.
A Husky. The one prediction I have in this game, because it's going to be really close game, there will not be a 30-0 run in this game.
I hope not. I hope not, man. Yeah, I think Terrace Reed's ability, availability, whether he plays or doesn't play in this game, is going to shape things. I think both teams could use this because both teams have played in big games. Both teams have shown the ability to play with anybody. But both are coming off of losses in their most recent big games. right? And so if you want to kind of stabilize yourself as being a top 10 team for sure, gotta win some of these. Being close isn't necessarily enough. You got to win some of these, and so I think there is a little bit of juice on the line in this game from that standpoint, certainly.
Can I just quickly say,
Yeah.
these teams have played 2 huge games. The final scores of those games, wins or losses, within 4, within 4, within 4, within 2. If there's one thing you can guarantee about this basketball game, it will be a single-digit final score.
So who wins?
Ooh. UConn does really well at MSG. It's going to be a heavy UConn crowd. I expect them to be at full health. I think this is a very strong UConn game. They pull this one out.
I think UConn does too. Even if Terrace Reed doesn't play, I think UConn does too.
Okay.
I think they do. Last week, I'm going back through what we had. The only difference we had was Gonzaga, Alabama, if I remember correctly, which, so you're up 2 on me with that. We're going to continue that because we're both picking UConn here. We'll wait for December. We'll wait for the ACC SEC challenge before we get back in the swing of things or make up some ground.
So I win November is what you're saying.
You win November, but as anybody who is not a Michigan fan will tell you, they don't raise banners for what you do in November. We got a long season ahead. It is kind of crazy that the next time we do this show, we're going to be talking about games that happen in December. It is pretty crazy.
Flying by.
It is flying by. We'll be back, as we mentioned, on Monday. Talk about UConn, Illinois. Anything else that may have happened over the weekend that is worth discussing. Previewing the week ahead, which is going to contain the ACC SEC challenge, which I do miss the ACC Big Ten challenge, but ACC SEC, just the regional rivalry and the ESPN contracts help with that as well. For Matthew Winick, I'm Brian Rauf. We will talk to you guys then. Enjoy your weekend.